Hey everybody, it's Leah Klett with the Christian Post, and I am so excited to be interviewing Shannon Bream today. She is the host of Fox News Sunday and the chief legal correspondent for the Fox News channel. She's also a best-selling author, and her latest book is titled The Love Stories of the Bible Speak: Biblical Lessons on Romance, Friendship, and Faith. Well, Shannon, you just write so many incredible books. I love that you're bringing Bible stories to life. And that's exactly what you're doing in your latest book titled The Love Stories of the Bible Speak. Share what inspired this book and sort of the journey that led you to write it.
We've had such a beautiful response to these books. Women of the Bible Speak, Mothers and Daughters of the Bible Speak. And we thought a lot of these stories actually contain beautiful love stories. There are men in these stories in the first two books that we've put together. So I thought, okay, well, let's look at those. But not just this idea of romantic love, which is what the world always wants to celebrate. We should, it's a beautiful thing, but also the love of deep friendship. I mean, there are some really sacrificial friendships in the Bible where people just really reach out and support each other and walk through really difficult things together. And I thought, let's celebrate friendship too. And of course, there's the whole love your neighbor as yourself, and that encompasses everybody. I don't see any exceptions in there. So sometimes that can be the trickiest or most difficult for us to do, but we're called to do it as believers. So, and I think the Bible, as overall, it's God's love story to us anyway. So there's so many different facets of love we thought we could look at.
Why is it so important to highlight the importance of friendships at a time when we're really losing connection, especially with the rise of social media? Young people more than ever before are isolated. Why do we need this reminder?
These studies and these reports that tell us people are lonely, they don't report having close actual friendships with like physical friends in their lives. And that really makes me so sad because I think so many of us were isolated during COVID too, and that really broke apart some bonds and left people with those really hurtful, lonely feelings. So I thought, let's take another look at that and remember how important that is to us. There's one gentleman I talked to about this a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I was supposed to go out on a double date, two of us couples, the wives couldn't go. And all of a sudden it turned into this guys' night. We said, well, let's invite some other guys. And he said, we had really good conversations and realized it'd been so long since we were vulnerable and talked and shared our problems. And he realized how thirsty he was for that, how much it was missing from his life. So Jesus had real friendships. You think about Paul and all the friendships he had, and there were real friendships. There were disagreements over things, but we see a beautiful modeling of really sticking together on the important things and supporting each other.
How do we do that? What are some practical ways we do that, especially as there's so much division over politics, over COVID, over theological issues? How do we still love people well and maintain these friendships when everything is telling us not to?
I do think we go back to that love your neighbor as yourself because God didn't give us any outs. And when he says love as yourself, I think about like we're all born so selfish and we all want like the last piece of cake and the best seat at the dinner or whatever it is. So if you can really think about the concept that Christ talked about so much, like the first shall be last and the last shall be first, like don't go seeking honor, but really look for the good of other people and be looking out for them. There's so much of that woven through Christ's ministry and all through the New Testament about don't be seeking the limelight for yourself. Be thinking about the greater good of other people. So I think that that's where we start with these friendships. But I also think vulnerability and transparency is difficult for us, but it's where we form the deepest bonds. I talk in the book about how Jesus and his disciples traveled together, often not knowing where they would lay their heads that night or where the next meal was coming from. And you think about people in your life that you travel with, like that's when you really get to know them. And so going through all the ups and downs of that, we see very real friendships. And I think the more that we're able to be vulnerable with each other and admit where we're struggling, we just bond together better and we can be more supportive of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as you wrote this book, what were some of the stories that most inspired or stuck out to you, or that you were like, I had no idea about this before? This is news.
You know what? There is a very tiny little story about David and Abigail that's tucked in there that I hadn't really ever studied. I remember the story about Abigail and the husband we meet that she's married to when this story starts. His name was Nabal, and he was just an impetuous. I mean, the Bible basically describes him as a jerk. He's disrespectful, he's unkind, he's rude to people, and that includes David. And so Abigail, David is coming after this brush off that's very rude from Nabal. He's coming to settle the score. And the funny thing is, the people within the household didn't go to Nabal to try to get protection. They went to his wife, they went to Abigail to say, like, whoa, 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 he's sparked this fight. We could all be wiped out. And she very wisely and humbly took a peace offering to David and said, please, future king, essentially, she was referring to him as, because David was on the run at this point. And she recognized him as future royalty and was very deferential to him, took this peace offering and stopped David from coming after their household. Well, Nabal ends up dying. He is not a good guy and he is taken out. And David remembers Abigail and her wisdom, her intellect. The words used for her in the Bible aren't really used anywhere else for a woman, because she was this great speaker and advocate, very intelligent. And David remembered her and asked her to be his wife. And it's just one of these really strange little stories that's tucked in the Bible that if you don't spend a lot of time digging around, you might miss it. But it has so many interesting lessons.
Yeah. Well, Shannon, you can't read the Bible and walk away unchanged. How was your own spiritual journey impacted as you studied the Bible and you got to know these great heroes of the faith and some of these lesser known stories?
I think the whole thing is this reminder of God's love for us as being so unconditional. I included the story about Hosea and Gomer, which is a really tough one in the Old Testament, about Hosea being married to this unfaithful wife who would run away from him and he would go redeem her and go after her, which was really God's message in his allegory to Israel about how even when they turned away from him and then came crying back to him, or were off running off of, after other gods and basically unfaithful, that he loved them. That never stopped. And he was always willing to redeem them again. So I think it's a reminder, and we see that through the New Testament as well. Like, God is always pursuing us with this unconditional love that we can't earn. We can't offend it so that it goes away. I mean, God just loves us with this thing that's hard for us to understand, but that he's always willing to redeem, not condemn us, maybe some of our actions, but never us. And so it was just a beautiful reminder to me of that through so many of these relationships.
Yes. Shannon, what are some practical ways we can see the humanity in people? They're created in God's image, even when we disagree with them and even when they do horrible things. How can we still honor them as individuals created in the image of God?
Yeah, you started such a great point, because I think if we start there and remember, like, we're all equal in God's eyes, we are all precious to him. So even people that are on whatever divide across from us, they are valuable to God. They are precious souls to him. So I think we start there. It humbles us a little bit. I always like to think of Princeton professor Dr. Robbie George has such good advice. He's like, you have to go into every conversation with the open mind that you may be wrong. And so I think if we could do that and sit down at the table and hear someone out, like, okay, let's actually communicate, maybe help me understand why they feel the way that they do, and give them that at least first modicum of respect and the ability to have a conversation and the ability to be humble, admit that you might be wrong. I think all of those things go a long way into forging friendships across all kinds of divides.
Yeah, absolutely. Shannon, you have such an amazing career. You're seen before millions. You've written all these amazing books. How does your faith very practically inform your career and how you use your platform?
When I start every day, if we're going to get practical, I am in the word, I'm praying. I like to journal too. And that's just the setup for me for the day. I know God's goodness is there. I'm reminded of his promises, and whatever tragic news or unexpected development comes into the day, I feel like I've already been bolstered by his promises and by his love to equip me to face those things. And then, on a real practical basis, I always pray over my work, like, help me to be fair, help me to have open eyes and ears, and that idea that Dr. George talks about maybe I'm wrong about some idea or some person. And so I do pray for wisdom. I pray for discernment, and that my work will be excellent. The verse, I think it's in Colossians, like, my work is unto God and not unto men. Like, I want to do an excellent job here, but remember that I'm representing an even higher force, which is my Heavenly Father. So I think my faith just weaves through everything that I do.
And what advice would you give to young believers who want to enter into the entertainment industry, the news industry, but it can be scary? I mean, you're picked apart before millions. What encouragement or advice do you have for them?
Don't read the comments on any articles or social media. Start there.
So
Instead,
true.
like, memorize the Bible verse instead of read Twitter. That might help. You know what? I've met so many young people recently who are trying to make it in Hollywood, whether they're music or an actor. And I just think that's fascinating that they want to go into these cultural spaces and be who they are, genuinely who they are as a child of God, but also try to pursue these very interesting, artistic, and important places that they need to be. So I think when you're grounded, whether that's your family that helps you to ground you in your faith, whether it's your daily walk and reading and prayer and those kinds of things, to be able to walk into the world with joy. People need hope. They're attracted to something joyful and hopeful. So whatever field you're going into, remember, like Twitter's not the real world. This world is not the end of the story. And you've got someone who has your back that no one else could possibly challenge.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now, Shannon, just one more question. What is your hope for the love stories of the Bible speak?
I do hope that it will remind people first of God's unconditional love for them, but I do hope people will be encouraged in their relationships. I've had two couples already tell me they're going through the book together, they're reading it to each other and thinking about their relationship. I hope it'll remind friends to reach out to each other and make those investments as well. But I just hope people will come away from it being encouraged and being pulled closer to God.